welcome to another episode of the Planning Analytics Deep Dive. It's great to have Nick from IBM and Steve, a colleague over here from CubeWise as well, talking about planning analytics, all things data and AI. We'll get into the weeds here on some Watson and whatnot. So yeah, appreciate you guys joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Andrew. So thanks. So Nick, I've been watching some of your videos and some of the stuff you put on LinkedIn, and I really wanted to pick your brain a little bit, right? Because there's a lot of this stuff, and we hear about the stuff that's coming from IBM on terms of like the AI interfaces and the chatbot assistants, and like, you know, and historically this has all been like kind of a lot of fluff, right? I know, like with the advent of the modern generational AI or stuff and generative AI stuff, that maybe that's not quite as true. So, like, where do you feel like AI and generative AI in specific sort of fits within sort of the planning analytics space in the TM1 space?
Yeah, great question, right? And I mean, I feel like with the advent of AI, you're seeing that term thrown around for just about everything now. It's like, yeah, we can do AI for this or AI that. And it's like, it's become a verb as opposed to an actual practice, right? I think that there's a lot of use cases for AI, specifically for finance teams. But a lot of the time, before I even go into that, it boils back down to like, hey, what do you do? What are your processes like? And it goes back to like good data principles, good software development principles. Like, what is it that you're struggling with? And then we'll look to see whether or not AI has even got a space in there, because sometimes there's cheaper, faster, better ways to do things that don't always need AI. I know that's kind of weird coming from someone whose title is chief AI engineer, but I'm very pragmatic with this stuff. I'm like, do what works. That being said, I do think that there are a couple of use cases where there's a lot of potential for the use of generative AI or machine learning or deep learning. And we're going to talk about some of these today. TM1 can be quite a large thing, right? So like when I was a consultant at CubeWise, right, like a big part of that time was like building the models, yes, but then also teaching people what their data looks like, how to use their data, how to slice and dice, how to discover stuff. So if we can make that process a little bit more simple, then I think that goes a long way. And Steve, I know that you've got you've been doing some work in that space. I think that exploratory phase of data discovery or data analysis is really critical and can really be streamlined using Gen AI. And I'm going to share the stuff that I did with Streamlit as well and PyCaret, so and Pandas profiling. So you'll see how that can be done without AI. So yeah, I think there's a lot of capability. I think it's just about picking what you want to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think that's a really great point, and maybe I'll just I see similar, right? So in the market and where we see some of these things, and when we're talking to customers that are out there, we see a similar sort of desire for, we want all of these cool things that we see online and we see in the media for AI, but they don't necessarily know where to start, right? And so, obviously they have all of this data. TM1's great for that, right? To your point, it's like the best database that you can have sort of out there, right? Or at least in my opinion. And so it's kind of a lot of like, how do we take this and how do we begin to leverage this to take all this stuff that we put all this work, this structured, functional database stuff, and put it to work for us with sort of modern techniques, modern technology, whether it's Watson or other AI tools out there, in order to be able to actually drive some real value out of it. And so to your point, right, I think a lot of it really comes down to the beginnings of what is your business problem you're really trying to solve, right? The video we did last time on commentary as an example, or is it something where, you're trying to get more out of your data or trying to get access to what your data is telling you faster, cleaner, smoother, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, and kind of democratizing some of this stuff too, right? You come into a planning analytics model, you're a brand new financial analyst that hasn't used planning analytics before. How do you get at some of these insights in an easier way, right? Kind of like Nick was alluding to, we build a lot of really fun, cool models, and then people try to get at it and, maybe need a little bit of a kind of helping hand to, get the most out of that stuff.
Yeah, and that's not to say the planning analytics is way more difficult than any other data tool or data storage. If anything, it's probably like one of the easier ones, because if you understand Excel, then you can smash around in TM1 and PA. I think there's just a whole, like, because it is such a end user friendly tool that people want to always take it one step further, which I think is great.
That's cool. So I don't know if we want to make a pivot here or something, but Nick, I have something I can show you.
Okay, cool.
Kind of in this vein, you want to see it? All right. So let me sort of show this. So I'll preface this. The last time I was talking with Andrew here, as I come in here to share my screen. The last time we were talking, I sort of showed a view of sort of some interfacing here with AI and with Planning Analytics directly. So what you're looking at here, Nick, as I'm sure you're aware, right? Planning Analytics workspace, and what you got over here is a box. And so if I go in here, I'm going to click this and I'm going to go. What's happening here is this is actually sending the data off in a real chat interface, right? So it looks really cool and it looks really nice and whatever, but this is actually communicating directly between TM1 and Watson, and it's going to take the question that's asked here and push it back. And I don't know if you watched our last video on this stuff, but people are going to say, all right, well, it's the same thing. Well, sort of, except not really, right? One, it's prettier, right?
Agreed, yeah.
Right? But
that's important.
Yeah. It is important. But then the other part here is now I have the ability to actually make this conversational. So, tell me a bit more about the 2023 data. And I can enter this. And now it's going to actually operate here and actually contain the continuous part of the conversation, right? And so it's a sort of a little way to be able to go and get access and get data. And to your point, Andrew, like actually begin democratizing your data by spreading it out and actually allowing your users to more easily go query the data, right? Being able to do this in natural language, really the real value of the LLMs that are out there, lets them, the people who don't necessarily know how to go out and slice and dice a queue, be able to go and get some insight around what's going on within their data without having to know all of those nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah, or maybe they do know how to smash around like Nick was saying, right? But then once they're there, they decide that they want to get this information. I mean, you just asked it like analyze this data. So it already must be talking directly to what's on the screen and kind of have some smarts there to sort of know that, right? So a user gets in there, does that. It's just kind of it's augmented intelligence almost rather than
exactly, right? And what's pretty cool about this, right, is it knows who I am, right? I'm in here as the admin and it's got the admin information that's in here, right? So it's able to infer from the data and what I'm doing within Workspace already on what exactly is happening and what it actually needs to consume in order to be able to do it.
And that would mean permissions are maintained as well, right?
What's that?
That would mean permissions are maintained as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's using the permissions that are within TM1 already in order to be able to do it, right? But I have another one, right? So,
okay. All
right, you guys ready?
Go for it.
You don't have to be in Planning Analytics in order to do it. So I know, mind blown, right? Mind blown, right? So not being too facetious, right? What this allows you to do is because this is available to you, you can do this and you can deploy this to sort of anywhere within your organization, right? Maybe you want to have like a landing page within your, whatever to be able to go out and actually access it. And so you can actually come in and, all right, what it is, or we'll say maybe summarize my income statement, right? And it's going to do the same thing. Now, in this case, I'm anonymous because I don't have any, it's a demo. But, you can go through and you can provide more detailed data to your user base to really be able to allow them to go and, again, democratize that data and leverage the power of generative AI here.
Yeah, wow.
So there you go.
This is really cool, right? And I think one of the things that I really like about this is that I'm seeing now that a lot of people are picking up AI and they're like, oh, I should use AI for this. And that traditionally means that like you're having to take whatever process you're doing and step out into a different tool or go and do something somewhere else. Whereas I think that the real value in or the way that you make AI truly successful is that you look at your existing process and you just make it better. So you bring AI to the process, don't take the process to AI or to some sort of capability. So that chat built into a dashboard, a lot of people are going to be inclined to use that because they don't need to go and rip something out of TM1 and push it somewhere else where they don't really know where it is, or it just adds another step to the process. So I'll give you an example, right? Like when a lot of the LLMs first came out, everybody's like, oh, these are great for coding. And I'm like, yeah, but it means that I now need to take my code, I need to push it out somewhere else, maybe ask a question and then bring it back in. And then extensions started coming out inside of VS Code, and it meant that I could open up a chat window inside of VS Code or hit Control K, and I would be able to generate inline. And I was like, oh, okay, now I will use this because it's not
Where it
changing.
belongs.
Exactly. I'm like, I'm not having to go somewhere else and like open up and authenticate in a million other things and then have to copy and paste my code into somewhere else. Now it just kind of works. And like, it was funny because one of my friends and I were talking about building web apps, and I was like, oh, I really don't I don't love coding in JavaScript, right? Like I can do it, but like don't force me to do it because I'm going to hate it. I was like, oh, maybe I could just use it to build my web app. And I kid you not, like within 8 hours spread over 3 days, like I had a complete web app up, which had authentication, had like visualizations. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, there's definitely some value here if I don't have to do this. And if you think about that, right, like there's so many processes which you know are going to be tedious. They're probably going to be things that you don't really want to do, but you have to do. So I think that's prime position for where you can use Gen AI and AI in general, right?
Yeah, I have a dirty little secret, Nick. I am not a JavaScript developer either. And the chatbot that you just saw, I leveraged generative AI to help me build it.
Yeah, but you say it as a secret, but I'm like, who really cares?
It shouldn't be,
right? Like it's like you like it works. Like one of the amazing things I love about computer science and like tech is that you can either do it or you can't, right? Like the app works or it doesn't. Like it doesn't matter how you kind of got to the end state. It's like if it works, it works. So like when I was just getting started in YouTube, I was building machine learning models, and I'm like, look, I'm going to be completely honest. I don't really know what on earth this is doing, but the end state model works. And I was like, eventually I'd go back and like, all right, what does this do? What does this do? Why do we do this? But if it works, right? And if it's saving money, generating more revenue, saving time, like what's really to complain about?
Totally agree. And to your point, right? It's something that I need to be able to do, and I have a process around it, and it's bridging the gap between that and you know the things that I personally know how to do, right? And so sort of bringing it back, right? It's the same thing that we're talking about here when it comes to the planning analytics side of things, and sort of bringing your process, you know, and making it easier to do or faster to do with AI, as opposed to trying to transform what you're doing today into something different by going and plugging it into an AI system.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I'm all for that, right? Within reason, right? So there's certain things that I think people are beginning to latch onto where they're like, oh, maybe I can't use AI for this. And I think we had a little bit of a talk about it last time. Particularly when we're dealing with TM1, we're typically working with like financial data, right? And numbers and stuff, which can be sensitive. And when you start blending financial data with a narrative or with text, then people can start to put the story together. And if that gets out, then that can be a tricky thing. So like, what are you guys seeing in that space? Because I guess I've sort of got thoughts on where that sort of goes.
Yeah, so I definitely think I see you know, companies really beginning to start to understand that value proposition and understand why that's beneficial. Like, you know, I said it last time, right? The one of the biggest things in my career that frustrated people was I have all this commentary at the detail level, right? And then, you know, how do I get it up to the top, right? And this is a technology and a tooling and, you know, technology that can really help solve that problem. And I think organizations are beginning to see that. But I think the other part to remember, and I don't think it's just, you know, with LLMs per se, right? Because we talk about generative AI but it's one piece of AI as a whole, right? You have different models and different capabilities and things that operate and work better for specific use cases, right? And one of the things I think people are beginning to come around to and understand is it's not just generative AI. There's this whole, you know, history of AI types of things, whether it's just pure, you know, data science or machine learning, or, you know, genetic algorithms, whatever it is, that you can then apply and build into something that the user can then understand through text by applying that analysis and the results into the generative AI components that are out there. You know, sort of this agents of your data, so to speak, not to not to take a term or something like that. But
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I guess where I was sort of going with that is in terms of data sovereignty, that's going to become like a big thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And go for it, Andrew. You probably
Well,
got
no, I was just, I mean, yeah, thinking about that as well. And I mean, obviously, I guess a couple of videos back, we did something where we took financial data and dumped it into ChatGPT and had to do some analysis for us, right? And it was for publicly traded companies. So that data is already out there. Anybody can go ahead and do whatever analysis they want. But you can imagine that there'd be a lot more sensitive data that lives in planning analytics that you don't necessarily want to have free form flowing out there, right? And so I think, that's one of the value propositions of Watson X, and sort of Watson's, full platform with Watson governance, to kind of give people a little more peace of mind that their data is not persisting somewhere else, that it's not being used for training in other ways, to give you a little bit more sort of, security in that data sovereignty that you're talking about. But that said, I mean, I think it's still an ongoing concern, right? And I think that people, need to be careful and cautious about what types of information they put where, and, put a lot of robust controls around that kind of stuff. But it is, as Steve said, I think something that people are starting to open their eyes to the value of. And so it's happening, right? Whether, people are ready or not.
Yeah, hell yeah. I mean, you kind of did my sales pitch for me, but I was actually going to go non-IBM-esque for this and just say, like, when doing this, and like regardless of how you use LLMs, like just be wary of like what you're sending, where it's being sent to, how it's being stored and cached, and that like regardless of whether you use like an IBM stack or some other vendor's stack, just like know that you've got the ability to leverage this tech. Like if you can use LLMs on premises, or if you can use it in a private environment, like you've got the ability to use this tech. Because I think a lot of people get afraid. They're like, oh no, I can't send my data out, or oh no, I can't use like AI on this particular set of data or on this particular thing. Like, and look, there's going to be circumstances where you just can't, right? Like if you're in a highly secure industry and like it's like got specific
personally identifiable information. There's laws around a lot of this stuff, and depending on where you live, they're different, right?
Yeah, and there's new AI regs coming out every day at the moment. So that's another thing. Guys, I can show you some stuff as well. Let me show you this. Have you guys seen some of the stuff I've done with PyCaret or commentary yet?
I saw some of your commentary stuff on LinkedIn, but I don't know if I've seen the PyCaret stuff.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Let's jump into it. So I got a bit of a video here. Here's one I prepared a little earlier. Should probably mute this. Alrighty, cool. All right, so let me share my screen. Alrighty, so what you're seeing at the moment is tier 1 inside of an application called Streamlit. So over here, what I've actually got is a data frame, and that it's a really fancy data scientist term for basically having a tier 1 view or an Excel table inside of an application. The cool thing is that I can go and refresh this application, and it will dynamically pull back data from tier 1 on the fly. So that means that I can go and do a ton of additional stuff. So let's give it a sec. And then there we go. I just refreshed. So let's let it run. And then so you can see that I've gone and pulled this back. But if you'd imagine, I could have a bunch of different environments. I could have a bunch of different cubes that I want to connect to, and I can go and pull back data on the fly. The nice thing about this is that I can then go and do a ton of additional stuff with the data because it's inside of Python, and I'm not sort of just working inside of P8. So over here, you can see that I've actually got the ability to bring back summary statistics. So if I wanted to do, like, how many times has a client gone, oh, can I just get an average, or can I get like a couple of quartiles, or like get me some like slightly more advanced statistics and push it into a cube? And you're like, I know there's probably like a TI function or a rule function somewhere that can do this, but like this entire set of summary statistics is done in like a single line of code. So like imagine you could just pull that out and push it back into a cube somewhere. So that's the advantage. And this is all built using tier 1 Py, right? So like it's an open source library that the Cubewise has built. You can tell I'm a big fan of the Cubewises. So you can bring this data out. You can also visualize it. So over here, I've got some visualizations built using Plotly. But if you wanted to do things like, I don't know, heat maps or tree charts or waterfall charts, or like there's like a tornado chart that I know a bunch of finance people like doing. You've got the ability to do that because sometimes there's a specific format or a specific type or a specific style that needs to be created, and you're kind of sometimes limited by what you can do inside a workspace. It's super fully featured. There's a ton of stuff that you can do, but there's always that one thing that you're like, I've never seen this before, and like, how do I go about doing that? Just know that you've got the ability to go about doing that. And again, more Plotly charts. I'll pause there. Any questions on that?
No, that's really cool.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And I mean, right now you're running this in Streamlit, but I guess theoretically you could drop that into Planning Analytics Workspace or something if you wanted to, right? So if you made a cool chart that, wasn't available yet, you could just plop that right in next to your PA data.
Yeah, definitely. And like you saw Steve, like he had his chat embedded in an iframe. You could just as easily plug this in as an iframe as well.
Nice.
Alrighty, taking this one step further, because people on the call, if you're listening, you're probably thinking, hold on, Nick, I can get a view out, I can put together some column charts. Like, that's not all that revolutionary. Like, how would I take this one step further? Well, let's say, for example, you wanted to go and generate some automatic analysis. Like, you wanted to profile your data, understand what you've actually got on your hands, because that's a key step when it comes to actually determining or doing analysis. Well, all I need to do is hit this profile button over here, and this is going to use a library called Pandas Profiling to automatically profile my data so that I can see things like all the different variables that I've got, the number of observations, if I've got missing data, duplicate data, as well as seeing just how much data I've got stored in memory. So automatically, I could just take an entire view, pass it through to this single function, and it generates this entire report, which can also be exported to like a PDF or whatever if you wanted to.
This is great.
That could be super useful.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Great for doing some data cleansing or other things that you might need to do. And I mean, that we all deal with on a project basis at a minimum, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly, right? Like, how many times do we get like a CSV or an Excel file and like there's just stuff that's wrong with it. Like you're in a rush, you need to get stuff together, and like you try to upload something and you're like, oh, there's like missing data, or something's mislabeled, or like I've got like this one random outlier, like somebody somehow sold like $9 billion worth of, I don't know, like coffee cups, and you're like, how, what? Like, and then it just throws everything out, right? Like, imagine if you do this, or like you can see this immediately, because it's got the ability to go and find outliers. If I skip forward a little bit, we can see all of our variables, but it actually gives us a number of different alerts. So if you had something which was standing out rather than, or had an outlier, it would pick it up and you'd be able to see that as well.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and you can see it's calculated correlation. Like the number of times that, like, when I was building like models inside of TM1, they're like, "Oh, Nick, it'd be really nice to see like what is correlated with like this increase in sales." And I'm like, "Yeah, it would." And then it's like you are a little bit limited there, but the ability for this to do it is just so quick. And like, if I shoot forward, you get like these
and that
really
correlation
nice
thing could have been like the basis. Well, I guess that's where you're going to, the basis for your predictive forecasting and stuff, obviously, right? So
correct, because then you know what features are relevant when you're actually plugging it in to your machine learning model. If you've got like a bunch of like sandboxes, probably isn't going to be all that relevant if you're pulling data out of TM1. Like, maybe it is, because like maybe there's a high, medium, low sandbox, but you'd be able to pull that out if you do this type of analysis first up.
For sure.
Yep.
All right, and then skipping forward, right? So let me just move this over. And it's like, if I wanted to go and build machine learning models, I can actually go and pass this data to another library. So I've tried to find as many libraries that kind of just do it all for you, because I know that there's like a lot of steps that happen in this process. If you wanted to build a machine learning model, or if you wanted to visualize this, like, let's say we wanted to build this from scratch, right? This is going to need like Bootstrap, need like a bunch of JavaScript applications, like probably need a backend server, need a front end. This is like a single line of code to generate the Pandas profile report. And even if you're not a Python developer, it's like, I kid you not, one import and then one line of code to run it.
we need a LinkedIn post or something from you, Nick, that's like your top 10 favorite libraries that do it all for you. I mean, I'm certain that I would use all of those. Can imagine others would as well.
Watch this space. That might be a LinkedIn post for today, actually.
There you go.
I'm just going to use Gen AI to come up with the other 8, because I've got 2. All right, but that does lead me to the second one, right? So we're seeing Pandas profiling. The next one's called PyCaret, and I can actually use PyCaret to go and generate a machine learning model for me. So if I go over here and choose my machine learning model in a sec, what you'll see is that I actually build not one, but actually a ton of different machine learning models. You can see we set up an experiment and we get a session, we get what type of machine learning model we want to build. So in this case, it's regression. And the advantage of this, because like I'm always going to get the question, people are going to be like, well, Nick, I can already do forecasting inside of TM1 or inside of Workspace. Like, why do I need this? Well, that forecasting is typically based on seasonality, right? So like it's the trend within the month, within the week, within the year, within the day. But what happens if you were more, like you operated a merchandising type business, or you operated a wholesale type business where maybe, or like a retail business, whatever type of business, you're going to plug in a new campaign or offer a specific type of discount. How would you factor that in? Because that's not necessarily going to be seasonal unless you're doing the campaign at the same time every single year. Or what happens if the campaign is different? What happens if the discount is different? Like, how is that going to impact your data? Well, this is where slightly more advanced machine learning comes in, because we can bring in those features to be able to build that into our ML model. The nice thing about this PyCaret library is I think it's like 4 lines of code to be able to go and get these pipelines built. And then what you get out of this is a number of machine learning models. So down here, you can see that I've got a gradient boosting regressor, extra trees regressor, ADA boost regressor, really fancy terms. But each one of these is just a different algorithm that's been run on your data to build a sales forecast, right? But it also ranks these machine learning models. So right now you can see the top one is this one, and we've got a mean absolute error of 72. So that means on average, it's around about $72 off on your forecast, which isn't too bad.
No, I mean, this is really great. I love how it scores them all as well for you. You know, like we've been using the planning analytics native forecasting tool that came out in PAW a couple of months or years ago now, I guess. And, you know, you can do like the sort of lower level one where you sort of select an element and you have, you know, a button. You can either do univariate or multivariate. You can also then, of course, like schedule a baseline forecast, or not schedule, but sort of preset it up. And it'll build you this forecast statistics cube and kind of give you the scores for all of that stuff. And then we usually kind of take it one step further and throw in some TM1Py kind of, you know, predictive forecasts and put those in there to give them a score as well. And then you can kind of, if you do that slightly differently for different features, build yourself your own sort of ensemble forecast, kind of, you know, mix and match some of those to put into like your final ultimate version here. So this is kind of along those same lines. It's cool stuff.
Yeah. And I think to your point, right, like explainability is a big thing, and or even just explaining like what a particular thing means. Because sometimes you're throwing these statistics or these metrics and you're like, okay, is a higher number better or is a lower number better? Because like they do vary, right? Because the MAE you want to be lower, but your R2 score, you want that to be higher because it means that you're explaining more of the variance. So I think breaking that down and making it more digestible goes for like any tech.
Yeah, totally.
Black box makes that black box transparent.
Yeah, this really resonates. I mean, I remember years ago I was doing a similar exercise here, but we didn't have all of these tools. And so we literally just took out Excel sheets and we tried to like do this, but we only knew the algorithms that we knew. So this is really a great way to be able to like take that and sort of extend it with the tech that we have today. This is awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's like a key thing and why I love TM1. There's just like anything that you could potentially think of that you want to do, like you can do it. Like if you want to build like, I don't know, I saw somebody build like a Rubik's Cube visualization inside of TM1 once, and I was like, cool, I'm glad you did that. Don't know why, but I'm glad that I know that if ever I need to do that, I can do it inside of TM1. But yeah, there's one last... Sorry.
Next, you got to build the AI to actually solve the Rubik's Cube in TM1.
Yeah,
There you
exactly. That like we get up to some fun with it, right? There's one last thing that I wanted to show you, non-Rubik's Cube related, and that comes back to like our bit about commentary. So every team's going to have commentary, right? Like they're going to be writing a month-end report. They're going to be producing a narrative around their data, because really, like, the numbers are great, but we want to explain what drove those numbers. And I think I remember like when I was like an analyst, I was working in a management accounting team prior to getting into tech at all. And I'd be there till like midnight, like just slugging away, writing like these price variance analysis. And I'm like, Guys, this is really not that different from last month. I could probably copy over last month, update a couple of numbers, and like the commentary is relatively the same, because trends exist for a reason, right? Like unless something drastic changes, like what's going to happen in the business is kind of the same, unless something massive happens, and then it's just a new line. It's like we changed something drastic this month. That's why everything changed. But let's say that we've gone and done a little bit of price variance analysis, right? And inside of my GL cube, you can see that I've got a column called watsonx commentary. And for each one of my big variances, I've got a bit of commentary. So I actually used watsonx.ai to write this commentary here. So for now, it's actually just template commentary. It's not all that relevant. But let's say that you've gone and done your big variance analysis, you've gone and identified the big variances, and you've gone and explained those. The nice thing is that using watsonx.ai, not even just watsonx.ai, right? Like using LLMs are really, really good at summarizing information. So if I give it a block of text and I'm like, summarize this, make it shorter, make it shorter, make it shorter, or like summarize this and draw out the key facts, or explain a total variance to be able to go and explain what's happened in the business. LLMs are great at that. So what I actually did is I hooked this up to TM1Py and watsonx.ai, and I told it to take all of this commentary here, which is what I'm calling my pass one commentary, so really low-level commentary, and I've asked it to go and generate a summarized version of that commentary. So what I wanted to do is generate the commentary across all of my accounts, across my entire chart of accounts per division. Because typically each division submitting their commentary, they're like, all right, and we produce a pack, or at least that's how I used to do it back in the day. So could I use an LLM to do that? Well, that's exactly what I've done. So using a little bit of code, I lie, it's a lot of code, but I've made this all open source so anybody can pick it up and use it as well. And what it actually does is it goes and grabs the data, it passes it into a prompt, and you can see here that I'm asking it to analyze this total variance. So explain the 41,539. And then I've explained what a positive value means, what a negative value means, what the values and the names measures within my TM1 cube mean, and then explain that particular variance or summarize it based on the lower level variance, because I'm passing that pass one commentary through. And then if I bring it up, what it actually does is it goes and runs through all of the different values or all of my different divisions, and then it automatically pushes it back into my TM1 cube. So that way I'm able to get my lower level commentary and bring it up. And imagine that I just had this one cell as a text box inside of my Excel sheet for my report. I can bring that commentary back. And then I don't need to stick with this, right? I think that's a lot of the time people have this resistance to using AI or using a statistical generated forecast. You don't need to stick with this commentary. This gives you a baseline that you can then pick up and go and change completely if you need to, or make adjustments to as needed. So it's able to streamline that process rather than you having to sit there and write it completely from scratch. I know I definitely would have taken this when I was there at midnight rather than doing this from scratch.
Absolutely. And I mean, I like what you said about the starting point too, because that's the same with, some of the, machine learning forecasts that we're talking about as well, right? You don't have to stick with Lasso's, regression or whatever, right? You start with that, or you use that as kind of an informative sort of forecast, and then you build from that. So it's just supposed to sort of help you.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, part of the point of this, right, is it's not that you're replacing a human, but you're making the communication between humans much easier, simpler, and sort of back to your earlier point, right? It's enhancing the process that you're already trying to go through and streamlining that to make, all of that commentary more visible to the people who, are the ones asking you to enter it in, right?
Yeah, definitely, right? I'm going to stop sharing now. But like if you think about like how we write like code for a TI, like a lot of the time, or what I used to get my team to do when I was running a squad, I was like, look, guys, just get it working and show the client. Like, because half the time we're not going to get it right the first time. So we just need a rough cut, and then we can refine. That's kind of the same way that I use AI and how I teach people to use AI. Look, might not be perfect the first time, but can we improve on it? Hell yeah, because this is that baseline cut, but we've got to that baseline cut 20 times as fast as what we would have done if we had done this from scratch.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's that whole 80-20 principle, right? And it gets that 80% of the stuff done. You still have to finish that last bit, which is usually the hard part. And that's the part where you want the human anyway, right? Doing the value-added activities.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And I
exactly,
mean,
exactly.
even just from the working in the AI space, right? Like the number of times I've had to, go through the prompt engineering exercise in order to get the prompt the way that I want it to be, to get the response that I want it to be. Same idea, right? You're never going to get it perfect the first time. And it's part of making it work in the way that you want it to work. That's really the art, as much as the science here.
Yeah, definitely. And like sometimes like look, you need to do a complete like recut or refactor. Like that happens. Like last night I was coding late and I'm like, I for the life of me, I don't know why this is working. And I threw it to Gen AI. I was like, can you just sort this out for me? And it did it. And I was like, you know what? I'm like, it's coding better than me at midnight. So if it helps you in those times when you're not able to, then I think it goes a long way to help you be more productive and be more consistent, something that I'm at least trying to do lately.
Yeah,
Yeah, give me
absolutely.
the
Totally.
outline first. Give me the scaffolding, and I'll then paint the Sistine Chapel with it. But give me something to start with, and let me go from there. Kind of sometimes too.
Yeah, definitely. And like I was even thinking, I'm like, so give me the outline, I'll tweak it and adjust it to what I want. And then I'm like, hold on, you can come back and refactor it and just clean it up as well at the end. I'm like, I was like maybe you rewrite your commentary and you add in all the extra things. And then you're like, oh, you know what? Like maybe I could just use Gen AI to make it like sound nicer, or that like you've already done the work, you've already made it like relevant and accurate and performant and like actually explain what you're trying to do. But like, why can't you just again add in that extra little bit? Like, you don't need to go and then check grammar and like make sure that it all makes sense. That's another process that you can sort of streamline and throw to Gen AI.
Yeah, all the parts that we kind of overlook when we're thinking about all the glorious, AI going to solve all of our problems that you were alluding to, at the beginning of this call, right? But it's some of those just sort of basic little bits of blocking and tackling that you do in all aspects of your job, whether it's writing an email or writing a Python script, it can just kind of get you started, get you to be a little more productive and efficient.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Nice.
So I guess, Nick, what do you, we've talked a lot about like some of the stuff that we've done and some of the things that happen. Where do you see this going next for sort of the planning analytics community and the finance community as a whole as it relates to the AI space?
Yeah, I haven't worked out how to do it yet, but like I'm already thinking about this. So there's a big push towards the use of agents out there with generative AI. So basically, the agent can automatically like plan and think and reason, but also act. And then the nice thing about that is that we don't need to specifically define a process. We're just able to go and give the agent tools, and it's able to work out what tools it needs to use. So like, let's say it has a Team 1 tool to pull back a cube view, and another tool to add in a dimension, or I don't know, delete a particular value or update a particular value. Imagine you've got the ability to have an agent integrated into your chat and it's just able to do that. So rather than somebody having to go and say, I don't know, increase like sales for products that end in Y by 20%. Like you could build an agent that is intelligent enough to do that. So yesterday I'm building one that I'm going to be demoing a tech exchange. Like I'm obviously really into finance and stocks and like looking at like numbers, and I was like, well, could I just get an agent to do all of that for me? And the nice thing about the way that you set up this particular set of agents is that you define personas. So like one agent is going to be like a Python developer. So let's say that I need to build reports or visualizations or something out of it. I'm able to use that particular agent to do that side of things. But then I've got another agent that's a researcher, and that researcher's got access to the net, so it can go and find the relevant data to pull back. And so by bringing these two agents together, they're able to hand off the task between them and navigate the end task. And so once they've navigated it and worked out that, hey, I've got the right answer, I've managed to achieve that specific outcome, then it's able to respond back. And that's where I think this is going to go, right? And like it could be just agents for like little things, right? So maybe we talked about like a commentary agent, and that commentary is able to go and write the baseline commentary, take a pause, like while somebody goes and updates it, and then it's able to go and edit and refine that commentary, like get rid of any like typos or grammar errors. And then who knows, maybe that agent also goes and then sends it out to the upline manager for review as an email, right? These are things that we all know that we do, but having that as an automated process or a semi-automated process, I think is gonna go a long way.
A little like robotic process automation, sort of with this sort of AI stuff. Well, that was a nice plug for that session at Tech Exchange too. I think Steve and I are both going to make sure to attend that one for sure. Sorry, Steve, I cut you off.
No, that's okay. Absolutely. As I was going to say, the other thing, right? Even the PyCaret stuff you were just showing us, right? Being able to develop an agent that's able to execute that and generate that data for you based on something kind of like what I have in my workspace, right? That data, hey, generate out what my predictive forecast is going to be, and then an LLM on top of that to push the result and analyze that to tell you, hey, your forecast should be this, and here's what that means relevant to everything else. Sort of bringing it all together into one sort of functional application, using the functional database of planning analytics and the AI space. So.
Or I mean, like we've now got multimodal models inside of x.ai, and I was like, where would I use this? Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, like, imagine you had like within your, and like specifically with agents as well. Like imagine within your commentary, you might say, hey, this particular invoice came in higher than expected, and you had an invoice number in there. You could actually go and pass that off to an agent and go, can you explain like why that invoice was higher than expected? And maybe the agent goes and pulls out the invoice number, it goes and finds the document. We then go and use a multimodal model to read the PDF and look at what's in that document. And then it returns back an explanation to the user and says, hey, the invoice was higher than expected because within the invoice, we've been charged for 54, toilet rolls instead of 12 toilet rolls, right? And it's actually able to do that. And like, think about how much more that's going to streamline the process.
Even just data ingestion that way. I mean, we get a lot of requests, I think, for being able to like read from PDFs that are, certain documents that are not well formatted or easy to just ingest, right? And so to be able to kind of drill back to something and display some kind of, multimodal information as well, would be pretty cool. Tell me about, drill down into this number and then it pops up the invoice for you right there, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Or like take a PDF and extract like the line items into JSON format so that I can load it. Like we know that's like a nightmare process. Like for one, it's okay. But like imagine you've got like 300. You're there for like quite a bit of time unless you've got like a specific process pre-built to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on another Planning Analytics Deep Dive. It's a great discussion about, lots of interesting data and AI topics.
Yeah, it's great to see, a thought leader like Nic and his sort of his approach to this, right? And I was just really, really impressed to sort of get an understanding of where he sees this going in the future, right? He was talking about AI agents and some of those things in the future. And you and I have been talking about a little bit about that stuff offline too. So it's really great to sort of hear that and see that maybe, we're all sort of moving in the same direction here. Very cool.
Yeah, it's good to get a little validation there too, and definitely excited to see him at Tech Exchange. I know he's got a couple of presentations on this topic, as do you and Hugo. Yep. So looking forward to seeing some of you all on this thread there as well.
Yeah, and soon enough, Andrew, this is going to have to be more than just Planning Analytics Deep Dive. It's going to be Planning Analytics Deep Dive powered by Watson.
Yeah, it's just going to get deeper and deeper.
Exactly. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Steve.